Okay, so I think we are live now. We have 168 participants. Just go to chain morning. Okay. We didn't start the session yet. I just want to test first. I just got the message that we can't hear. So is it okay? I'm audible?
I can hear you, Dr.
It is audible, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I just got one message from the participants. I just wanted to ensure.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good morning to all participants. Okay, I think all of you can hear my voice. Okay, our speaker, Dr. Noor Ulahan from Universiti Malaysia Kelantan. Dr. Ullah, how are you?
I'm good. Morning to everyone, Doctor.
Okay, so we extend our warm welcome to each and every one of you as a participant. Okay, and this is our second week for the second research methodology webinar. And our session will start within a few minutes. Just want to remind you, okay, let me share the slide first regarding the micro-credential. And for today's session, we are going to have Dr. Noor Ullah as a speaker for the literature review session. Okay, the session will start at now, okay, until 11:30, and then after the afternoon break, we will have another afternoon session at 2 p.m. until 4 p.m. Okay, let me share the slide first. Okay, so it will stop Dr. Ullah slide. Okay, so now I think you can see the information regarding the micro-credential or MMS. Okay, the second research methodology webinar is actually a micro-credential program that offer 3 credit hours. Okay, and let me inform you first so that you can maybe you can check with your university whether they can accept the micro-credential statement, MMS. Okay, so to obtain certification, participants are required to complete assessment. Assessment is just like assignment, okay, from the each of the speaker, and then what you have to do is just to complete as assessment. And then at the end of the webinar, okay, you have ample time to complete it, not week by week. You can complete it maybe until the end of the, they will inform you about the deadline for the assessment. Okay, and then for the interested participant, you have to pay for about 100 ringgit. And then you actually got the link in your email. Okay, please refer to your email, the weekly email that we have sent it to you. And every week we will remind about this MMS or micro-credential and the payment link. So please be alert with that email link. Okay. So if you are interested, just contact us, or you can go to the link, or you can send an email. And from time to time, I will share the information to the webinar chat. Okay, so without further delay, I would like to invite to welcome Dr. Nogulahan to present his first session in this in the morning. Okay, thank you. The floor is yours, Doctor.
Can you unshare the material, Dr. Zamri, please? Okay, a very good morning, everyone. Let me just quickly share the slides, and before we is the slides is visible now? Just give me a quick, messages maybe.
Yes, Dr. Uda, we can see only the blank screen.
Okay.
Okay, now we can see your slide.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so again, a very good morning to everyone, because it's morning in Malaysia. I suppose maybe in some parts of the world it'd be very early, or maybe getting, I mean, the start of the day. So I would like to have a quick introduction first. I'm Dr. Noor, working as a case coordinator and senior lecturer at Universiti Malaysia Kelantan. In the department, basically the business school, we have Malaysian Graduate School of Business and Entrepreneurship. So my expertise basically, I have 4 to 5 years of experience in teaching, right? My PhD is from University Technology Malaysia, UTM. In management, my research area is green human resource management, sustainability, pro-environmental behaviors. Most of the time, I think this is fourth time or third time I'm working with the DRB-HICOM University, right, with under Dr. Zamri. So this is, I think, the series of workshops that we have conducted before. So I have to acknowledge this session was supposed to be, taken by Prof. Roslina, our dean, but she's commuting. She's currently in Romania, so we need to reschedule it. So I think on the screen you can see these are my expertise. Mostly I do teach research methodology, both quantitative and qualitative. And these softwares like SPSAs, MOs, Smart PLAs, in vivo. So I think my credential given below is given below. My ORICD and other details. So in case in future you would like to work and research, so you're always welcome to connect. Okay. Let me just check if any questions getting from participant or anything. Okay, participants are asking the chat functions, please enable. I hope so it's enabled now. Okay, so I think I would like, before we proceed, I would like to know, I mean, the majority of the participant are at least just to see the demographics of the participants. We are from like different countries, regions, and then also I would be happy to see how many we have master, PhD, if we have a quick know-how for me. So I think the purpose is then I will shape the discussion that way, because let's say, for example, if we're more from PhD, so I will go a little deeper in detail. If it is most from, master students. So can we have a quick, I don't want to waste time on this, but if I think very quickly, if I know about the demographics, either you can write in the chat, or if you can quickly introduce yourself for a minute, because we have time to go with the session. So we have 2 hours now, and we're having 2 hours after the break. So we have plenty of time. So I would be happy if you would like to write in the chat, or at least I'll get a quick assessment. Okay. Sheila, PhD student. Okay, great. Dr. Zamri, can we enable the chat, please? Maybe better.
Actually, main host already enabled it. I'm not sure whether it is a technical issue. Okay. Maybe at the moment they can use Q&A. I check with the main host.
Okay, thank you. I think please, I think sum up you are writing. I'm not sure you're writing in the chat box or you're writing in the question, Arsen. I think I can still see 22 students responded. So I'll be quickly going through just to give you an assessment that we have a wide range of participants. And definitely this is, free for all the scholars, students. I think some of my students, they already completed PhD, but they would join in. So it's a learning session. So that would be great. Is okay. Unit 10 Malaysia, PhD students. Okay, my apologies. I think some of you still writing that the chat box is disabled. Probably there will be some setting issue, because I cannot change much from my side. I requested Dr. Zamri to fix it, but for a while you can use chat box. Q&A session, I think also can write there, but some of you are writing, so I'm not sure some of you cannot access or all of you, so that's okay, but I just want to see. Okay, okay, we got Malaysia again. Good morning. Okay, thank you. From Bangladesh. Okay, great. Okay, from Unitar. Okay. UPSI. Okay. Master program. Okay, great. Okay, Mustafa from UTM. Good. From Nigeria. Okay, so we got some, I think, mix of like DBA, PhD, MBA. Great. PhD, that's great. So I would be happy, like, because most of you, especially the PhD student, they will seek more assessment because okay. Muhammad Mujahid, okay, from Pakistan, good. Putra Business School. David from UTM. Okay. Microbiology, okay. MESPA. UUM, okay, great. So we see quite some students from local universities, MSU, UUM, Putra Business School, great. We have students from Tanzania as well, okay. USM, TBS students, UMK. Here we got from East Malaysia as well, Sabah, great. So I think I'm happy to proceed in a sense that we have a quite diverse participants. So I think I'll be covering both the basic and advanced level. Okay, I think certain queries related to probably the home university. I think they have some micro credential courses. I think management will address that. No worries. Okay, so I think I'm happy to proceed. I think we got some question answer sessions now. I see chat. Okay. Okay. I think that's great. So I think let's proceed with the session. Okay. So today we'll be talking about two different sections to cover the literature review. The first part is we'll be discussing to understand why we do literature review, why we need it, and how we should do it, right? So the first part is very basics, and we'll be using a traditional approach to do a literature, meaning that for those who are doing master or they just got enrolled into programs, but they don't know much about systematic literature review. So I think for them that will be helpful to just begin with. So we'll be talking about how we should, how we do literature review. So that the first objective is understanding literature review. Meaning that sometime certain students just do the normal way we do the literature. So they will access the Google Scholar or any other, relevant databases, and manually they will do the literature review. That's one of the way, the most of the thing what we did in the past. But now trends are changing. Even the supervisors are now expecting students, not just to come up with a literature, but that should be systematic, meaning that when you propose your model, your construct, especially the theoretical model or the research model, then your supervisor, at the initial stage will ask you, how you come up with this proposed framework. Now, a lot of the time, student will just pick certain variable from different studies, and they will combine it, and definitely they'll put the underpinning theory in place. But that's not the way to do. That's not the way to come up with a construct, with your research framework. So that's the reason, to answer those sort of challenges, I think systematic literature review, it's kind of a more, we can say it's more validating. And I think it is the protocol it applies. I think that's greatly deal with all those questions that need to be answered. So at the first stage, we will just quickly go through the traditional way of doing literature, because some of you might be still learning, and exploring new methods and ways. And then after that, I think we will go through the systematic literature review. So, but I also, apart from sharing slides, I will do it practically also in the second session. So the first session will be a kind of foundation to things, to build your know-how, your understanding. And then in the second session, if you have laptop with you, definitely, or you're connecting through other streams, sometime you're traveling and all, but I think you can also, so I'll give you some time also, you can practice. So it's like a, hands-on experience is always important, because we talk about, the classic two types of research, the basic and the applied one. So I think until unless we don't apply something, that will be an issue. That's why a lot of students struggle when they write, because writing is a skill. Until and unless you don't practice, you will not master it. So I think that's very important to understand, what you do. So I think you will be in a better position to craft your literature, no matter for research article, no matter for your proposals. I think that will be the idea to go with. So the first thing we have to understand, what is literature review, why is it important, and why we do it, right? And then after that, how to do it, then definitely we will, discuss more about systematic literature review, and how you should, create this kind of flow into your work, and how that protocol works when we talk about systematic literature reviews, and what are the key techniques and tools available. Even right now, student, taking help from the ChatGPT, right? Because that's also, can make your label of course, it cannot reinvent something for you, especially in terms of academics, but it greatly helps you in terms of digging down your research area, or in case, it can reduce your labor work. Like in the past, let's say, for example, you would like to know about something, so you go to Google Scholar and you write it, then you copy paste it, and then you read it. But now you get something which is quietly, at a final stage. But again, I said, I'm not talking about research article and ChatGPT, but I mean, these are the sources and tools which greatly make your life easier and your work easier. But then again, you have to use it smartly. As a researcher, we always used to say your contribution. When you write, there should be contribution from you. I mean, you can read other work, you can cite them, you can take help from there, but you need to acknowledge. So I think that comes in most part of the world, especially in the developing world, since the systems are not, developed, and a lot of people will, get into that unethical things. So I mean, we all, those who done with the PhD teaching now, quite some experience, those who are still learning, I think it's in the academic world, there is no full stop. So you have to keep learning, keep upgrading. We need to unlearn, the bad practices. We need to relearn the good practices. So I think it's a kind of training process. So whenever I take a session, I will always, put, more attention or stress towards, I mean, we all at the end of the day, we are learning, we're in a learning state. Maybe the curve is different, maybe someone curve is more steeper than others. But I mean, when you learn as a researcher and you have this sort of mindset and approach, I think you will grow more and you will grow better. So I think these are the quick takeaways I would like to put in front of you, what I learned through the years, over the years, because the mindset, the approach is very important before you learn. So you have to develop that mindset, which enable you basically to learn faster and better. If you work in a kind of that if you are a person with that kind of closed mindset, to restrict yourself that I will learn from a specific person or resource, or you have that sort of issues with kind of, a lot of people will say, oh, I'm already, I already done with a PhD, what should I learn from a student? So normally we do learn from students as well, because they read, they explore new areas, and then, sometimes we say, okay, but at the back of the mind, we keep learning. So I think practice sessions, learning sessions, and since this is a free opportunity, so I think we should all be, have that sort of mindset to learn and also to accept. Let's say, for example, if two scholars are, sometime in a conferences, people are debating about theory, researches, and we have to disagree with respect. We have to agree also in a sense when you agree with things, but sometimes you have to, you have to disagree. But in research, we always used to say, if you disagree with something, especially in the literature review, when you're writing and you are criticizing someone work, so you have to wear that critical lens, when we talk about research, the objectivity, what do you call, Creswell and Sekaran, they give a stress, on these key hallmarks of research, which is called objectivity, academic rigor, testability. These are all key hallmarks of research. So whenever you disagree, you have to put a valid argument with the sources cited. I mean, if you want to disagree with someone else, that's fair, that's fine, but you have to put up sources, you have to cite other work, you have to put your evidences, then it's fine. Your supervisor might be agree with you, your examiners. So the point here to make is that you have to be you have to be more objective, you have to be more critical. So you have to wear that lens, and then you criticize. You can't criticize based on your own personal reasons, because that will not be taken as a critical comment. So I think that was the first insight. I'm not sure if people are. I just want to quickly see if someone's still writing anything. Okay. We'll be coming to questions. Okay, you can still ask in between, but I think we all, what do you call it? I think I just mentioned quickly about ChatGPT. It's an amazing tool. For the first time, Australian universities, they come to know that some of the master students, they're writing their assignments using ChatGPT, right? When it comes to research, I think ChatGPT can make your work easier in a way that, let's say, for example, since it's work on the stored data on the internet, right? So, for example, I mean, because the way we write articles is quite different from the way other people like in the market normally, like, let's say, for example, these podcasts or some other magazines article, newspaper article, that might be because it doesn't need the sources. But when we write a literature review or do a research work, we have to put citations, right? So by now, I would say it's helpful in a sense that, let's say, for example, you are researching on certain topics. I mean, in a broader way, I'm not now coming towards the research paper or the published article. I think it can greatly help you to assess which are the new avenues for research. You know, let's say, for example, you're writing proposals or you're writing a paper and you would like to take some suggestions, like the way we take from each other, like, what do you call it? What are the new contemporary areas of research in that particular country you're residing or in a particular region or globally might be. So I think it can list down for you, it can dig down, so you can use it as a tool, as I mentioned to you, to make your work easier. I mean, this is my point of view, in a sense that you have to take help. So it's a tool basically. So how you use that tool? Normally when we write, you know, when we read and then write things in your own words, that's a different story. I'm not talking about rephrasing, that's a very basic things. I'm talking about the whole concept of things, how things work. So I think you can use it as a tool that help you to unlock new areas of research. And then definitely you have to, in a research, what we do is that we try to read article, because in our case, we need to cite, right? Using then definitely the Mendeley or EndNote or other things. So our writing is quite different from the routine writing. That's why I think it can help you use it as a tool. Maybe we can have some other session. There are certain ways that can help you in the systematic literature review, but I think this session is primarily how to do using the other tools. So I think I will rest the case here regarding that questions that. So we will be having a detailed question answer session at the end of the once we, you know, the session end this one. In the second half, then we will have a detailed Q&A session. I think I just want to be updated. That's why I just opened. I'm not moving the slide yet. Since with the first discussions, okay. So. Okay, I think
Dr. Ula, are you moving to the next slide?
yeah, actually, I was just reading quick questions. They
Okay.
dropped some questions, so I just told them we'll have a detailed questions session at the end. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we will have all these questions once we done with the session. Then most of them will be answered. The one which is not answered, then I will reconsider it. Okay. So the questions he asks is about, what do you call it? What is the main, focal point when we talk about literature or to proceed with literature? Is it a problem statement, research questions, or your framework of your research? I think it's a very important question, and I hope it will be answered once we go through the session. But before that, I'll give a quick summary. Well, there are different school of thoughts. When we talk about the research cycle, so we start up with the introduction that is primarily the problem statement, right? So you have a problem, okay, and now you would like to resolve this problem. And then definitely when we talk about problem, that's mostly focusing on your dependent variable, or in a structural equation modeling sense, we call it endogenous variable. So that particular construct is very important. That's the main area of your research. Let's say, for example, I want to work on sustainability performance, and I would like to read this area. So that will be my focal point, in a sense that now I would like to see what are the key antecedents, affecting this sort of phenomena. I go quality discuss later, but in a sense that once your problem statement is identified, then you have to approach it with your research questions. So basically, all these steps are interrelated to each other. Let's say, for example, once you identify the problem, then definitely the framework role is very important, because that will signify, we call it parsimony of the research. So what is parsimony? It's one of the key hallmark by Sekaran. So you have to put relevant variables, to explain. When we draw the framework, so you cannot include variables which are not relevant, which doesn't make any sense, both theoretically and practically. Let me just give you example, the classic example by Sekaran, that let's say, for example, smoking causes lung cancer. Now, smoking is one of the variable, you can say, one of the phenomena, or one of the kind of aspect that can causes lung cancer. Might be some people who smoke, they don't get lung cancer, but greatly it works in the medical science. So now, if let's say, for example, you're reading about, or you're talking about the causes of cancer, so yes, smoking is one of the cause. But let's say, for example, if you're talking about watching a football game, right? It has nothing to do with the cancer that way. So meaning that when you choose variable into your framework, that must be relevant. That must make sense. It's not just randomly you pick variable, group together. This is mediator, moderator, fair enough, but it should make sense. So a lot of the time students struggle to make sense out of it. So I think that's for me, as an academic person, in a sense, as a scholar, you should read first. You should deepen your know-how, how thing works, and that the literature will help in that way, to broaden your spectrum, your understanding about that phenomena. Because the more you read, the more you will understand, oh, these factors may be less relevant, these are most important ones. That's why we have a proposed framework initially based on your reading, and then we read more. So we want to see either those variable which you propose can retain, or you can change it. So it's a kind of to and fro process. So there is no final word, okay, this is my proposed framework and I'm not going to change it. So I think the most ideal way, based on my experience, is that your literature will, synthesize, and you can see that will revalidate your framework. So I think research questions, research objectives, we derive it from the problem statement, and this is also based on your research framework. So all these are interlinked, meaning that you choose a wrong framework, the one which has issues theoretically or empirically or practically, that will cause problem in your research objective. So all are interrelated in a cyclical way or sequential way. So I think you have to take care of that. I think the other questions, I think I hope I answered. So let's proceed to the session. And then we will, I mean, in between maybe also if you have, but I think we will have a proper session, you know, what do you call it, to talk about, what do you call it, the research model and everything. I think I will come to the question, because if we start questioning now, then we will be deviated from the main session. Okay, so let's begin. So what is literature review? Okay, we all do literature review at certain point of time. Okay, during proposal stage, during, you know, looking into a preliminary area, what to do. Okay, so there are two you know, roles of literature, and especially in a quantitative research, which is greatly, we believe, is more objective in nature. So what is literature review? There's some basic questions, okay, the fundamental questions, okay, and why and how we should do it. That's another question, which is based on the first questions. And then what are the key challenges that we have? So a lot of the time, we talk about what are the challenges, but we don't talk how and why we do it. Because most of the time when you answer the question why and how, then maybe most of your challenges, you know, got mitigated. I mean, it's minimized to a greater extent. So literature review, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it's integral in a sense that we normally do it kind of even before we choose an area. I mean, the one literature, the formal one, which we do normally once we designate our problem statement, once we identify our problem statement, you develop a framework, and then you do your literature. That's a formal one, the one we write one by one, our each construct, and then the hypothesis development and all these. So that was the one very kind of formal one, in a sense that very focused, okay, you know what to do. But the literature before you propose your preliminary area, I think that one is you know, we normally do for a basic, to develop a basic understanding. So literature does has a role before you choose your area and after you choose your area of research. And then broadly in all sciences, you know, starting from physical sciences, social sciences, now we have definitely management sciences under the umbrella of social sciences. In medical sciences, everywhere, literature does play a significant role, because it tells us what is known, okay, and what you are doing, and we have to highlight that gap, you know, what's not being done, right? So basically, if you do not do literature properly, it can trouble you in a lot of ways, as a PhD scholar, as a research scholar, as a student, right? Why? Because when you develop model based on insufficient literature review, then your model will be faulty, meaning that will be not validated properly, and then you will develop research questions, your research objectives based on the same model. So imagine if you build a model which has kind of theoretical or, you know, empirical or practical issues, then normally we develop our research questions, research objective based on the model as well. And then you see, starting from your first chapter introduction, which carries the problem statement, research questions, research objectives, scope, then it's meaning that starting from this point to the end, going towards your literature, going towards your methods, because your method will be chosen based on your research questions, how to answer, what to answer, which method is better or more, validating. So meaning that if you develop a model which has kind of considerable issues, then no matter what you do, in front, I mean, way look forward, then will you have issues, and then you choose a wrong based on the done because you didn't read sufficient, and then you cut the data based on the model which has empirical issues, and then it's like a vicious cycle. So meaning that it is very, very important to clarify your model by reading proper literature. And then when I say meaning that proper literature, mean that you do a proper systematic literature review. That's why in research, the literature role is very important, because it's one of the key component in your research thesis as well. Chapter number 2. Apart from that, you need always that preliminary literature to develop your model, at least to draw a proposed model. Later on, it might change. You may make changes. Even for writing a good background statement, also you need literature to read first. So I think unless you don't do literature, so it's one of the integral point, integral component in the research. When you write the report your thesis is like chapter 1, chapter 2, 3 is the second chapter, but in overall research, it very significant, importance and consideration. So let's explore one by one. So, and this is by Creswell in his book, Educational Research in Qualitative and Quantitative Method. This is the kind of stages or cycle of research normally. So you can see here, identification of the problem. So the question which I answered before, that what is the more important aspect? Is it research questions, problem statement, or model? So you can see here, every step is interrelated to one another. So meaning that you start from problem identification, okay, and then you do review. But it can be two-way also here. When you, what do you call it? Let me just put a marker in. So you can see here, this is your what do you call it? Identification of the problem, or to identify the problem statement. And this is the literature review. Now you see here, you can even go, let's say, for example, if you not able to justify your problem, you need to read more. Okay, and you can see here to specify your research purpose. So like these are all interlinked, meaning that in both ways you need a literature here to identify your research problem, to justify your research problem. Because a lot of the time when we talk about research problem statement, we talk a lot about the symptoms, not the main problems, because we didn't read proper literature. So in most of the cases, we're putting a wrong solution. We used to say in a research that putting a correct solution to a wrong problem also, can trouble you, or either way, other way around, like putting a wrong solution to kind of correct problem, something like that. Meaning that if you didn't identify your problem, that can trouble you with your research question. Because what is your research question? What is the purpose of your research? That's again stemmed from your problem statement. And then how we get into that, we write the literature, we read the literature review. So meaning that, as I mentioned, the role of the literature review is kind of twofold. we read it before we define our preliminary area, what to do, and we also do it formally, but we mostly focus it on the one which we do formally, like, defining your variables, then, building your hypothesis. That's fair, but the most of the work is also, need to be done before. Because when you diagnose the problem, or when you identify the problem, for that you need to do additional material, right? So this whole process of scanning, reading, surfing, all these comes, under the literature, because you're digging around, So I think the role of the literature is very, very important. And what another thing I mentioned about your research significance. Now, how you will come to know about your research significance? Because once you read, so what has been done greatly is already part of the literature review. And maybe your contribution is not that major, but still, meaning that even if you're putting a minor contribution or major contribution, but that should be highlighted when you know what has been done. So what is not done yet, you have to do that part. So there is, we're talking about to bridge the gap. So to bridge the gap, first you need to highlight the gap, right? So once you highlight the gap, then you will be able to understand, that particular problem. So that's why most of the time examiners will ask you, what is your research gap, right? And then the students sometime putting arguments which are not very sufficient, in a sense, that because they didn't read. So I think the role of the literature is, I think, kind of under highlighted, meaning that they need to be highlighted more, in a sense that we don't just consider it writing of a formal literature on the variables. So because if you don't know what has been done, you will be choosing a wrong set of gap to fill. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you commit a mistake at the start of your model, at the start of your research or chapter 1, that mistake will go till the end. And you cannot reverse it every time. Like certain things you can reverse, but it will take a lot of time. So I think it's always advisable to read properly, to read through the lens, with the lens of objectivity, rationality, that will lead you to a stage where you will be better equipped to handle, the issues that are concerning. So I think literature role is very important to highlight what has been done, okay, what need to be done. And sometimes there is a great deal of debate among the scholars. We always have this pro and, there always be a, there will be always argumentation among the scholars. So which way to go? So we normally definitely go, as a rule of thumb, with the majority. Let's say, for example, you're reading on the topic and there are different, let's say, for example, I'll just get a normal example, a classical one. Let's say, for example, we talk about job stress. Definitely, it's negatively impact the performance, right? The more you stress, the lesser will be your output or productivity. But you see, maybe some researchers exceptionally says it doesn't affect that way, or not to the greater extent. Or sometimes you're reading research which people have a mixture of findings. Then what to do? Research again. So in most of the cases, you will find that conflicting views. That's the role of the literature, to know the balance to you. Okay, and then you come up with your own one based on the previous literature. So normally, as I mentioned, we go with the majority view, right? But you always allowed to do that critical commentary, what you understood. So a lot of the time, the problem we see in the thesis, that your own contribution is not visible as a scholar. Yes, fair enough. You gather, you summarize the other work, What is your take on that? Which position you want to take? I think that part you need to, as a researcher, you need to work on, because nobody will do that for you. We mentioned about the ChatGPT or any other sources. Probably they help to highlight the issue. But again, I said, what you are doing, you are the better judge. Okay, you know better what you have done. So I think in your proposal defense and your final stage of your thesis, I think you should be the one who is in charge, you know, to take a front seat, right? We always talk about research when a lot of good, great students, you know, I have to tell this thing, they struggle in research because this thing is very practical. It has nothing to do with that basic orthodox way of reading, you know, memorizing thing. No, it's a skill. So a lot of people struggle when they come to research. They're brilliant students, they're bright students, but when they come to research, they struggle because it's more practical, as I mentioned to you. It's just like when we talk about research writing and publishing, it's a skill. Some people confuse it with a different way. No matter how many books you read, how to write, until you didn't start until you didn't start writing, you can't write, you can't craft a good paper, a good article. So I think it's greatly when we talk about what you call writing and publishing, definitely, you know, the end output is to publish. This is very practical. It's just like, I mean, driving. No matter how many books you read on driving, but until you didn't, you know, get back to the, you know, behind the wheel, you will not learn the skill. So skills are practical mostly. Yes, the foundation courses, the reading that help you sufficiently to understand the base. But unless you don't apply, it didn't work. Like we have three, you know, very basic principle to become greatly a wiser person, you know, a practical person. The first one is access to information, right? Now, access to information means what? Now we all connected through Zoom link. This is access to information, right? You go search into the database, that access to information. You Google, that's, you know, that's access to information. You read books, you access ChatGPT, right? These are called access to information. Now, the first phase, you know, is access to information, right? The second is understanding information, that knowledge or information that you got. And why is it important to understand? Because if you have access to information, but you don't understand that information, it's useless. As for example, now I'm talking to you with the medium, you know, the language that is English, right? Greatly you understand. I mean, matter people in Malaysia, other part of the world, irrespective of your local language, you do understand because we have a common point, right? But now if I cut down, get into any other local language, a lot of people will be unable to understand, right? So understanding is very integral in a sense that you have access to information, fair enough, but you have to understand those information, right? So this is the second phase. The third phase is applying those information or knowledge to get, you know, sense out of it. Now, you see, you consider yourself as a research scholar, as an individual. I mean, apart from a research scholar, you put this into your daily routine as a father, right? As a son, as an individual, right? We have access to things, but some of us, you know, we don't understand. And those who understand greatly, they don't apply. So unless you don't apply, you will not get the full sort of, you know, that capacity, that output. So I think similar true for the literature as well. The literature will help you to assess. The first we talk about access, the second we talk about understanding, The third, we thought about application. So the tools will enable you, help you to assess, okay? But greatly, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't apply anything, like let's say you know what is systematic literature review, but you don't apply it, it will not help you, right? If you know how to write, but you don't write, you cannot become a good writer, a good scholar. I mean, apart from the debate, we're not going into that quality, to which extent, which journals you're publishing, is it the top tier, Q1, Q2, Q3, 4? I mean, as an individual researcher, what we've been through is a training process. And I would always advise my students, to my colleagues, just begin with something. You cannot start up with a Q1 straight away. Definitely you go to Scoopers first, then Scoopers have series Q1, Q2, 3, 4. Then we go to Web Science. Then Web Science has the top 25%, second 25% quartile, and all this. So I think somehow to master your, you will do mistakes. You will get a lot of disrejections. You will be trying to reach people. They will, kind of that cold set of messages that will not, but you have to move on. This is how, thing works. So I think that's the kind of point where you initiate, greatly. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, so what is literature review? I'll go with very formal sort of definition, because I think I hope so I understand. I explained the background to you. So what is literature review? Literature review is basically the selections of available documents. Now, when we say available document, mean the one which we can access, right? There are thousands of, if I'm not saying a million, there are thousands of journals in different databases. Some of them we know, some of them we don't know, some of them we can access, some of them we cannot access. Like the databases, what we have prevalent are, we talk about Science Derrick, we talk about Elsewhere, we talk about Ambrel, we talk about Valley, we talk about Gesto, we talk about Taylor and Franks. There are lots you just unaccount, So there are a lot of databases available. Then we have books, okay, archives, we have published, unpublished. So it's a great deal of, a variety of sources available, to read. So literature is the selections of available documents that is both published and unpublished on the topic, definitely the topic you will search, which you want to look into, that is your concern. Which contain ideas, information, data, evidences written on a particular standpoint. Now, you see, if you are working in a particular area, and when you write, you will write in that particular viewpoints. Maybe your viewpoints is different from mine because I'm writing something else. When we talk about research, we greatly say, when we try to even disagree, sometimes even some students choose a similar topic, similar areas. That's fair, no problem. But let's say, for example, I'm looking into sustainability performance, and I would like to see it with the antecedents, let's say, for example, green human resource management, for that matter. I want to looking into, I would like to look into that sort of with the pro-environmental behaviors. You're also working on sustainability performance, but you would like to look into with the different lenses. Let's say, for example, you would like to looking into with the lens of environmental management system, or for that matter, you would like to looking into this with, let's say, for example, what's about innovation, the link between innovation and sustainability performance. Somebody would like to looking into, let's say, for example, culture, the green culture or the organizational culture. So the area might be the same, the problem may be the same, but how you approach it, that's matter. That's what one research can be different from another. One standpoint can be different from another. So I think that's a great deal of, when we talk about literature review, that the standpoint, the perspective is very, very important to fulfill certain aims or express certain values, certain views on the nature of the topic and how it is to be investigated, and the effective evaluation of these documents in relation to your area being proposed or your research being proposed is by Hart 1998. It is just a formal definition I put into consideration. Sometimes students say, oh, we don't have any formal, construct definitions of the literature and all this. So I think I hope you understand what we discuss is, based on this sort of orientation. So here you can understand the axis, which I tell you about. X is understanding an application part, but here you can see that when we talk about a particular standpoint and what you would like to investigate, we mention here the effective evaluation of these documents. Let's say, for example, you have axis, but the way you evaluate is not sufficient, or there are issues with that. So I think what we call it, the lens which you wear matter, how you evaluate. Definitely we evaluate critically with the lens of objectivity, with the lens which is more rational, right? That is based on set protocols or principles. That what matters. So this is about the definition. Now I'm just looking into these 6 key steps, which is normally described by most of the researchers, right? But this is kind of more traditional, right? This is not systematic yet, but it's a key protocol, how we approach. So first thing first, what we do basically, when you would like to start your research, you have to type in the key terms, what we call it, to browse or to search or to surf the key terms in place. So what are the key terms basically? So no matter for that, you use ChatGPT or you use Google Scholar. We're getting some new, probably in future where you, because the new version of ChatGPT is already out, the one which is a paid one. I think at the end, you have to ask the system, the computer, the database, what you want to search, right? So I think a lot of time, student will come up with a query or kind of question that they are unable to find material in a particular topic. So in some cases may be true, but in most cases it's not true. Why? Because when you want to search, how to search is very important, because let's say we're talking about pro-environmental behaviors, right? Now, when you want to search pro-environmental behavior, and let's say you get into Scopus or Web of Science, and let's say, for example, you got, in Malaysian perspective, let's say, for example, you got 100 studies, right, or 50 studies, and in a context of manufacturing industry or whatsoever. Now, when we want to search a construct, I think listen this carefully because it's important. Every construct has different labels sometimes, because with in English language and in other language, we have kind of synonyms or similar labels available. So try to search all, to gather all the papers. So let's say, for example, if I'm talking about pro-environmental behavior, then I should not just search pro-environmental behavior. I can also search, let's say, green behaviors. I can also search carbon behaviors. I can also search, organizational citizenship behavior for environment. I can also search behaviors related to environment, or meaning that I should just use different labels. So let's say, for example, I use pro-environmental behavior label, but someone might use green behavior, somebody might use eco behaviors. So one label has different synonyms in terms of label. One construct has 6 to 7 different labels. So let's say, for example, when we want to talk about sustainable performance to be assessed based on 3 dimensions or aspects, which is called economic, social, and environmental. Now, if I'm just searching sustainable performance, I might be getting paper only based on sustainable performance. But some what do you call it, green performance, some call it triple bottom line. So like every construct, multiple labels that are being used in the database. So I think whenever you want to search thoroughly, okay, assess all the labels available. And I think once you, better way to, so that's why I think it is important, what do you call it, to label our, when we try to identify the terms, I think that's the way to, just quickly to see who is, okay. Okay, I think there was a questions about synthesis. I think we'll come to that in a while. I think all of you will get equal chance to raise your hand and ask a question. But I think before that, we need to finish some of the slides because I want the next slide we should practice more because I discussed more generic. I didn't go through the slides yet. So I will answer your questions, okay? Now, so identify the key terms, as I mentioned, locate the research. Now, locating the research, literature, sorry, locating the literature is basically exactly where you want to do your literature, right? What are the databases you're using? What are the tools you're using, right? And then you have to evaluate and select the literature because you see, initially when you're starting your literature review, you assess so many databases, you get a bunch of studies, and then you need to choose because we have limitations. I mean, let's say, for example, the basic standard, what we was in UTM, that 300, in certain university, they have a limit, let's say 300 pages of your PhD thesis, maybe master, lesser than that. Now, 300, let's say, for example, now you can't be like 70–80% literature. So you have to equate it. There should be a balance in each chapter, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, 4, 5, right? Sometimes they have 6. If somebody has a mixed study, they just split the quant and qual methods. So I think you have to be choosy, and because that is your role to choose what is relevant, what is not relevant. So I think that is a great deal of when it comes to evaluate, select literature, right? Organization is also very important. A lot of students will put the literature straight away. There is no organization, there is no sequential way. I think that's very important to put it sequentially. To synthesize, definitely when you talk about synthesize, here your great deal of understanding comes, as I mentioned earlier, what is your contribution And when we talk about synthesizing, we also talk about that critical commentary. And a lot of time what we see, as I mentioned earlier, among the students, when they write, their own contribution is missing. The second thing is that the flow. Because when you copy paste at times, although you write in your own words, but you don't get the flow, because in one passage you're talking about one variable, in another passage completely you talk about other. So that flow is very important, meaning that, let's say, for example, you finish in one variable and then you start a new variable. So you have to discuss that new variable. You link it with the first passage. Where you left the discussion, you have to start from there. So a lot of times students ask the question, what does it mean by flow? I mean, because sometimes you can't visually show them, but let's say, for example, we have a session until 11:30 and we stop it at a particular slides. And the next session we have to start from there. You can't start from another slide because then it will be a missing link. So when we say there is a missing link, always with the reason you start from one place, the discussion you left there, you have to start from the same link. If you discuss multiple things in a one passage, it doesn't make any sense. I think that's very important to understand when you write your literature by yourself, meaning that you know where you left, you know from where you're starting. So I think that's a great deal of, the flow among the passages, how you synthesize it, how you articulate. There should be articulation, the flow of thoughts in your literature. If it is not there, then definitely you can't expect your supervisor, your paper by the reviewer to be accepted or to be, So I think that the takeaways here is the flow, the articulation of ideas, and that connectivity. And we need a sequential flow of events. We don't need like random sort of flow, because then we will be unable to understand, right? Like now I'm talking to you people in a context of literature review, and now suddenly I start talking about politics. I mean, your mind, your brain will not work, because then you will be unable to connect the dots. So I think that is what we call to synthesize. There should be a flow, there should be articulation among the ideas and thoughts. I think that's very important. And then definitely we write a literature review. But so I think this is a very, traditional way of doing the cycle. Now we will quickly get into systematic literature review, and I will explain why systematic literature review. So in the past, a lot of us, we did literature review by normal doing way, like, get to Google Scholar, get the material, the papers, read it, produce it in your own way. But in that process, let's say, for example, you're searching on Google, you might miss, because as a human, our capacity is that we can look into things in a one way. I mean, in a one, in one dimension, for that matter. So I think systematic literature review is a kind of 360 evaluation of the whole databases, in terms of like, and greatly these databases like Scopus and Web of Sciences, they help you to look into the documents very sequentially. So in the past, when we develop a model, we didn't develop based on the systematic literature review, but we developed based on our understanding, what we read, what we understand, and what we apply. So when nowadays, the good business school, if you are going through a PhD or you're writing for top journals, they will not validate and endorse your theoretical framework or your research model if it is not backed up by a systematic literature review, because it is not humanly possible to read all, thousands of articles from those databases, which even greatly you don't have access to everyone based on which university you're into, because certain university has funds issues, has databases issues. So if you are not systematically assess the document, then how you claim that the model you propose can be validated, or, in every sense. So that's the reason I think Nowadays, we talk about systematic literature review protocol that is in place, both in qualitative study, proposing models, quantitative studies. We talk about the bibliometric and others all, but systematic literature review is basically, I mean, the search you conduct that is very systematic, that is very rigor, and it's, you know, in a sequential way, you get into the databases. Just 2-3 minute pauses because I need a little rest, and then meanwhile I will read a quick questions if. Okay, I think at the end of this session, you all will be greatly, you know, in a position to assist one of the questions from a medical background students to see there is a great deal of articles, and then we are kind of unable to read all, and also there's a practice involved. So I think systematic literature review is a kind of answer to these queries, because that will enable you to take care of your key terms. Definitely you cannot, when I say when you want to use different labels, is just to know about how many articles published. Exactly when you specific in your research, definitely you'll be using the specific variable name. You cannot use multiple labels in your own research, meaning that I'm talking about the variable name. Whatever the variable name you have chosen, you have to be consistent with it in your own research. But in a searching perspective, I say you have to search all to know how many work has been done. But when we talk about labels in your own research thesis, let's say, for example, your variable name is sustainable performance. So you cannot use sustainability performance. You cannot use triple bottom line. You have to use that label throughout, consistently throughout your thesis. But to search the articles, the database doesn't know other articles that you are reading. So you have to get, so that's the role of different keywords available. So I think right here. So why we need systematic literature review, and what is systematic literature review? A systematic literature review attempts to collect all empirical evidences that fits pre-specified criteria in order to answer specific research questions. So you know, definitely you have to draw a research questions, or you want to express what you want to do. It uses both you know, explicit and systematic methods that are selected with the view to minimize the bias, right? One of the questions previously I read about the bias, right? That thus providing more reliable findings from which conclusion can be drawn and decision can be made. So systematic literature review, you know, will answer greatly, you know, the way we conduct literature review. Now, you can see here, what are the rationale, what are the purpose of systematic literature review, how does it work? It minimizes the impact or the bias of error. So I see the multiplications of, different articles in different databases, so the repetition, the errors, because it works in a systematic way. So whenever sometime you use that Excel sheet, which we downloaded from the Scopus or Web of Science database, sometime you might come through repetition, so to minimize the impact of bias or errors, it's greatly helped. It can also help to end the confusion, because sometimes, as I mentioned, like when you do traditionally the literature review, you might sometimes, it leads to confusion. The more you read, sometimes the more it confuses you, in a sense that there are different articles in different journals, and how to enable yourself to gather them all, and then what you need and which particular country perspective or context specific. I think that sort of confusion, is greatly minimized, because now you have a specific lens to wear and to, read all this work. So let's say, for example, you want to conduct study in a context of ASEAN, right? So you can greatly see article only from these 4 or 5 countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and others members of ASEAN. So highlight where there is not sufficient evidence. So it greatly helps you to explore the gap. What is the gap in research? So that's why when the evidences are less, there is no sufficient evidence, there the area where you need to work. Combining findings from different studies can highlight new findings. And also it can help when you have different studies and you come to know they have different directions, or they have findings, then it can help you to highlight new findings, and can mitigate or minimize the need for the future trials. And also, when you would like to futuristic research, it can greatly help as well. And sometimes the repetitions, the further studies, then it's also greatly the unnecessary studies can be avoided, because now what has been done. Because if you're not using systematic literature review, sometimes maybe you're doing the same thing what the others do, because you don't know, you didn't read the whole things. So I think that's greatly helped that way as well. I'll just cut down for a while. So now you can see here, this is the process. It's a kind of protocol when we do systematic literature review. So let's say, for example, the first thing first, define your research questions. Okay. You can also call it research objectives, whatsoever. So how we do that? Normally, definitely you have to, do the collaborations or consultations, okay? It is just example in a context of medical health. So that's why you can see community and all. But the first thing, you have to define your research question. What is your research question? What you want to do, okay? Then develop the review protocol. It's a pre-specified criteria where you want to type of studies to be included or excluded. Later on that will help you in data analysis. So develop the review protocol, meaning that you have to define a criteria, okay? Because that's why we call it systematic. It has a prescribed criteria that will later on help you, to synthesize. Identify relevant studies. Now, it is very, very important. As I mentioned, let's say, for example, you go through Scopus database or Web of Science, you find thousands of papers, but they might not be relevant to you, right? So let's say, for example, you are searching on a topic and you come across 10,000 papers. Now, those 10,000 papers, maybe most of them will be not relevant to you. So you have to choose the relevant studies that is, under your scheme or area of research. Now, assess eligibility also. Select those studies which can meet the predefined criteria of inclusion. So we have this inclusion-exclusion criteria, which is predefined in the protocol. Let's say, for example, you have decided that you will not include unpublished papers. Let's say, for example, you put the criteria, you will not read paper from that specific date or year. Let's say, for example, you want to choose paper only from the past 10 years or the past 20 years, right? So that's a pre-specified criteria that you put in. So you have to comply with that. So that inclusion exclusion criteria is very important. Data extraction, as I mentioned earlier, the developed extraction should be from a specific date. Study assessment or appraisal, assess the quality and validity of the studies included. So in a predefined method, you might say, I will include only paper which are at least minimum Scopus journal, which are indexed with Scopus, right? And maximum definitely the Web of Science. You say you will not include those articles which is not published in a Scopus, journal which is not Scopus index, you will not include. So that predefined criteria will help you to ensure the quality and validity. I think one of the questions asked by the student that how we can assess the validity of ChatGPT. That's why I mentioned when we talk about, because ChatGPT will pick material from everywhere. So it is your job to ensure the validity, to cross-check is that information is valid to be used or not. That's why in research, whatever we say, whatever we write, that should be valid and properly referenced. Narratively or statistically summarized, express. So this is the synthesis part. When you put the sequential flow into the context, when we talk about articulation in the studies and the cross comparison, you compare, you cross compares, and then you synthesize. And definitely we talk about knowledge translation in terms of review the details of the study and that are disseminated to the relevant target audience using appropriate formats. So we talk about that knowledge transition also in a sense that you have to translate, deliver knowledge to those relevant platforms. So these are the key steps include in systematic literature review, right? The first thing first is formulating a problem, defining your protocols, collecting data and extraction, critical appraisal, analyzing and presenting your result, interpreting your results, and improving your updating your reviews. So I think we will go one by one quickly. So the first step is formulating the research problem. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I think one of the questions from the student also, which area is more relevant, more important when it comes to the research questions, problem statement, and the framework. So most of them are interchangeably used in a sense that like we derive your research question from your problem statement. That's why in the bracket we write research questions. So what is your research questions? Let's say, for example, your question is to assess the relationship between salary and employee performance, right? So question may be broad or narrow depending upon what you want to serve. Formulated question will guide you many aspects of literature review process. So sometime you have to specify the question. It's better for you to assess. Okay, so it depends again. It might be broader, might be narrow. It's up to you. Searching strategy, inclusion, exclusion criteria, a clear and concise statement of the reviews, objectives, questions, a critical, assessment. So really, that when you choose your decision, you need to broader you would like to go in. What are the inclusion and exclusion which suits? So all these parameters you have to gauge your work. So the second step is basically to define protocols. Now, what is to define protocols? Features, to distinguish systematic literature review from a traditional review is the pre-specification criteria and methods. In a normal literature review, we don't pre-specify any criteria. We just do whatever we want. That is why the rigor is not there. What is the academic rigor? By Criswell, he put it in Sakaran, they put the key hallmarks of research, scientific research. One of the characteristic of scientific research is the rigor. What is the rigor? Rigor is that protocol, the criteria, the set principle. So in systematic literature review, there is a set principle. That's why it's more rigor. It's backed by that, protocols. What studies will be included or excluded, as I mentioned earlier, how exactly which state will be conducted. So you see here, all that protocols are given here. Let's say, for example, as I mentioned to you, like you put that parameter that you will study only the past 10 years, right? And also you put there, okay, even you can go country-wise for that matter. You can even go discipline-wise for that matter. So that will help greatly. What are the keywords to be searched? What are the sources to be used? And how to avoid duplication in reviews. So I think it's a very important thing, how to avoid duplication, because a lot of articles published with the different names. So I think that's one of the second stage we call defining your protocols. The extraction sources, these are some of the databases which I mentioned. Others are also available, like for example, Web of Science, Scopus, Science Direct, Springerlink, EBSCO, American Society for Mechanical Engineers, Jester, IEEEX, ProQuest and everything. I think these are the different databases depending upon your school, which access you have. So greatly in Malaysia, I think all of these are accessible depending upon your university, paid access. I think this is great. Just read it. This is one of the example how we write the review, the methodology basically for a systematic literature review. So you can see that mention specific criteria is mentioned here. The paper is about internet banking adoptions. Okay, how is it important? And in the combination of the four fields like information technology, finance, marketing, and service management. And then the field is like Science Direct, Emerald, Springer, IGI Global, Taylor and Franks, right? And the search engine, definitely, they said Google Scholar and Scopus will be used to ensure. So this is the keyword criteria. You can see here, internet banking adoption, acceptance for use as a search title to search abstracts and papers. Conference paper, master thesis, and doctoral dissertation, textbooks, and unpublished working paper were excluded. So this is the exclusion criteria. Because academic papers usually use research. So according by NERD 1995, they say greatly the published material are better to be used rather than the doctoral dissertation, master thesis, and all, because we call it peer review process. So all the top journal that will go through that rigorous process of revisions and everything. Different types of journals, peer-reviewed, published in press with available English full text work all considered. So you can see dominantly we're talking about English as a language, as a medium, right? It is noteworthy that the decision that non-peer-reviewed paper will be not accepted. Okay, so that's basically the exclusion and inclusion criteria. The search results said 187 related article published from 1999 to 2012. The full text of these articles were carefully studied and 22 articles were omitted because they did not concern from the. So finally 165 being finally selected and reviewed. So you can see how they come from a more broader to a more specific criteria in a sense. So we mentioned about exclusion, inclusion, we mentioned about the set parameters, and then we talk about those redundancies. So this is just how we craft a methodology for the systematic literature review. This is just one of the examples that might help you when you are writing your systematic literature review. This is the Scopus database. We will practice in the next session. But you can see here, you can put your keywords here and, stress and academic performance, and then you can search through. This box will get in the setting box. So this can define your kind of what you want exactly. So that will be transported into Excel CSV. You can later on export it, this file. You can see here citation information. So normally we go with the full. So you can get all these information, the author name, publication year, source title, and then whatever the software you're using, that will be, exported to that. So if you're using EndNote or Mendeley or RefWorks or any other, that will be there. Step number 4, critical appraisal criteria. So there are 3 broader categories in this session. So the one I think I already explained to you, the academic rigor. What is rigor? Basically, rigor has a thorough and appropriate approach that has been applied to key research methods in the study. So academic rigor is that there is a pre-specified criteria you have to apply. That's one of the hallmark of scientific research as well, that you can't, let's say, for example, what is rigor? Rigor is like, let's say, for example, you want to do sampling in a quantitative research. You can't simply say, oh, I want to do 100 participants. That's why, because it's easy to me, or I just want to do it. No, you have to go through the proper sampling protocol, which says, let's say, for example, G power, you can assess your sampling size. You can use Morgan table. You can use Israel table. You can use any other statistical formulas available to specify your sample size. That's the academic rigor. Okay, so rigor is very important, the pre-specified criteria that you have to follow. Credibility, definitely. The findings should be meaningful and credible and relevant. So you want to operate, this should be your critical appraisal criteria. 3 things: academic rigor, credibility, and relevance. Because you can't choose things which are not relevant to you. So this should be the criteria. Step number 5, analyzing and presenting the results. So we talk about more into synthesizing. We talk about before as well in detail the what do you call it? The articulation, the thought and the write-up, the flow, the sequential flow of events and how you derive conclusion from your work. So that's critical commentary, that's synthesis in terms of thoughts, the flow of information. All these things are very, very important. So I think you need to take care of that as well. This is some sort of example of distribution of papers. You can see the previous member, the previous, what we mentioned, the 165 papers. So that's a kind of different, description of those. What are the criteria? You can see here, descriptive were 51. These are the different classified areas on the basis of which we categorize, different, articles. So this is another graph. We're showing the studies from 1998 to 2012. You can see that progression of papers, where it's published, and these are the different, percentages and frequencies of things. You will get these graphs. You can all write an Excel sheet, but you can get it directly from the Scopus database as well. This is another by distribution of journals, these 165 articles, how it comes. So you can see International Journal of Banking and Marketing, International Journal of Internet Banking and Commerce, Information Management. You can see all these sequential flow of events. And now this is by regions, by different regions, around the globe, geographical regions, about the internet banking, Africa, Eastern Africa, Middle Africa, Northern, Southern, it's all the globe. So you can see a different, papers. So they can give you a holistic view globally, because what do you call it? When you read by yourself, you don't know from which particular zones you pick. So it's more comprehensive, way of reading and assessing your literature. This is now particularly, on internet banking. You can see here the authors in the index column, and then by year, by country, and by class, and type, and by theory. So what are the prevalent theories, that are being brought up into the internet banking? Most of the time when you develop your model, you are being asked to put your underpinning theory. So which theory you're putting in, who said it, what's all about, the whole things. Another important thing is the interpretation of the results. So definitely you got a lot of materials, now to synthesize and build up. So I think that's the stage where it's come to research proposals or theses or research article writings or any other research related, proposal development, grants. I think all has a great deal of, what do you call it? To go with. So the seventh criteria, the last criteria is improvement. There is always improvement, whatever we do, we always, it's one of the science principle that is based on falsification, right? We always try to improve what is not good. We revisit again, we improve. So the last step that is among the 7 steps is to rethink, searching strategy. Sometime what happened, let's say, for example, as I mentioned, research is a sequential process. So sometime what happened that if you commit a mistake at one stage, it might carry through all the way. So if you want to rethink, you can redefine your strategy. You can re-look into your exclusion criteria. You can look into your data extraction methods, the choice of your synthesis in terms of analysis, the way you present material also can be rethink. So there is always improvement way. There is always a way out to unlearn the kind of practices which you not suiting you. You can, but the criteria should be the same. So the rigor, the protocol should be the same, but it can be different. Okay. There is another important protocol when you talk about the workflow steps: search, assess, read, and write. So the first thing I told you about access to information, understanding, and application, that's a different method. But this one, like search, you have to search, assess, read, and write. Unless you don't write, you cannot become expert. So I think it used to say practice makes a man perfect, right? With the reason that the more you get trained, the more you get hands-on experience, the more you'll be better crafting your work. Okay, so this is, I think, one of the way to help. I think this is very quickly just to show you, let's say, a quick kind of assessment review on the green HR practices. This is what my work area and its theoretical and practical aspects. So you can see based on, I think I want to put it down a little. So this is based on the literature review. Our focus was to assess, let's say, for example, it's a kind of paradigm shifts in the human resource management area. And you can see there are different eras where how scientific, how management evolved, starting from the period of scientific management by the Frederick Taylor, where his principle of, focus was efficiency, right? So you can see here from 1980 to 1945, this era was related to the efficiency, according to Frederick Taylor, is more of the opinion how to accelerate the process. And one of his, one of his principle was to how to get efficiency. You have to be master at something. So do over and over the acceleration. And once you do something over and over, you become expert, and then that will greatly improve the efficiency. So that was the time when, we talk about labor and the production, houses, and then how to improve the productivity. So according to him, acceleration is the key to get master, on something and do it over and over. So according to him, there was a great deal of division of labor. So he focuses on division of labor, and his opinion want to monitor the employee. So when you monitor them, definitely they will work hard. And when they work hard, they will greatly deal with efficiency. After that, 1945 to 1965, there was a great wave called human relations era, where they criticized Frederick Taylor for a constant monitoring the employee constantly. So they want to, let's say, look into the relationship part, like the personal and social domain. It's a more sort of humanistic view where to take care of the employee as well. And then we talk about cooperation era. So this area was more into cooperation. Revisionism area, that is the school of thought when 1965 to 1980, where we talk about autonomy. Now people criticize it. I mean, people appreciate the cooperation, but there was more needed to be done. So in this era, the literature more emphasis on autonomy, because employee also need a great deal of, self-respect, right? Some sort of discretion, right, to do on the job. So, a lot of employees would like to get clarity on the job and how they deal with it. So this was the autonomy focus in the purpose column, you can see here, row. And then we move towards, you can see here, what do you call it? To the, to the strategic HRM area, right? From 1980 to 2000, right? So here we talk about performance, okay, the output. And we talk about some strategic and managerial orientation. And then the last one we talk about from 2010 onward to present and move on, we talk about sustainable human resource. So we talk about sustainability in HR, we talk about the broader spectrum of HR and sustainability. So this is basically kind of the period, right? These are different periods. These are the focus. What was the focus? What was the purpose? So this was about paradigm shift in what you call in human resource. So let me just go. So now we move onward from this. We move on to green HRM. What is green HRM? The term green HRM is essentially introduced by Renwick in 2008, and it's relatively a new area of research that align key traditional HR practices with environmental management, right? It is quite challenging for organizations, basically, because of a lot of compliance. They need to do a lot of environmental compliance. The laws are stringent now. And greatly in the past it was ineffective, but now things are changing, and most of the firms they're going toward this sort of orientation. So based on the literature, these are the key practices you can see here. Green human resource planning, green job design and analysis, recruitment, training, performance appraisal, employees involvement. These are the sources. where these were taken from. These are the Web of Science systematic literature review. The output, what we saw, that these are 754 total papers. Okay. And you can see this sort of graph. Definitely we read around 100 plus, because some of them were not relevant from the. So you can see here the records that was from management, since our field is management, for example, in my case. So I will only focus, suppose, in management area, the paper which is quite relevant to me, although we have papers from environmental studies, so mostly these two, business and management, 175 plus 109, so almost 184 papers, right? So this is the way how by discipline wise you can look into it. This is by document type. So the total was 526 articles. This was a review article. So when we talk about exclusion inclusion criteria, so then we sometimes we don't include book chapters or maybe conference papers or editorial early access. So we maybe normally go with article and review mostly. This is by country, in the US, the top 151, then UK, England, then Australia, Malaysia is also here, Germany. So this is country-wise. Let's say if you are doing in a particular country, that will give you that sort of orientation. In China is 177 after US. So in India it's 67. So meaning that this is, we call it systematic protocol, because country-wise you can also see the contribution. And this is the graph for those. So what was basically the significance when we studied these studies? So we greatly saw that green HR is a relatively new area, and these are the key researchers in that particular area, especially the Renwick, who coined this word. Mostly the studies on green human resources more theoretical in nature. Quantitative research is still quite new when it comes to this area. So that was one of the significance finding of the research. These are some implications that have been studied. Organizations should effectively use green HR practices to encourage pro-environmental behaviors and improve sustainable performance. The application of green HR, such as training, educating their manager how to be rewarded if they involve in pro-environmental behaviors. Some sort of organizations also highlight the importance of environmental management systems. We also greatly acknowledge that managers, nowadays companies have environmental managers also, so especially to take care of, so they used to say managers of environmental performance should be held accountable in case if they don't perform better. And there's a great deal to spread awareness when we talk about, let's say, for example, how to save energy, reduce waste, and create environmental awareness within an organization. There was some key implication that was being brought up. Companies should use green HR practices such as training. I think this is what we discussed. In the US, basically, particularly, US-based firms pay more to eco-friendly CEOs as compared to the traditional ones. So this is one of the points. The implications of a green HR practices and EMS certification is considerably low in the developing part of the world. So that's another, as compared to the developed country, which is called OECD countries, that is include US, UK, Japan, Australia, and all. Major issues. What are the major issues in the underdeveloped or developing countries where have low compliance with the environmental practices? There are the cost considerations, documentation, economic and social barriers. So this was a kind of a quick look into, let's say, for example, on the topic of green HR, how we do kind of quick critical inquiry using systematic literature. So I think that was all about the session. I just summarized because you will get the slides anyway. And the next session, we will do it practically using both Scopus and Web of Science database to show you how we do systematic literature review. So let me quickly go to the. Okay, let me just quickly scan through. So. Okay, I think slide, that was the first slide I discussed more generic perspective. That's why the slide, I was not changing the slide. Oh. Okay, okay, I think there was a question regarding to using a single model, underpinning single model instead of a theory. Example, SOR model instead of a theory, like the theory of plant behavior in my PhD thesis. What should be fine? Should be theory explaining my research framework. Well, certain like theory of plant behavior, and then there are certain different models related to this. So by rule of thumbs is always advisable when you have a framework, right? So at least minimum, you know, 1 or 2 theories. Sometime what happened, you are merging different areas. You might need more than 1 theory. So previously there was a school of thought that you should have 1 single theory to support your theoretical framework. But in some cases it's not possible because let's say you pick variables from different disciplines. So you can have more than 1 theories, but the essential part is, let's say, for example, your IV converging or leading to your DV, your exogenous to endogenous in that way, or maybe your IV to mediator moderator. Make sure the connection you're explaining, the relationship between 2 variables, that should be supported by the theory in the first place. I think that's what is important. Then no matter you're using which sort of theory, and so that's the role of underpinning theory that should justify your you know, key variables. Okay, it is advisable to embed your sentences within each, to embed our own sentences within each other's studies mentioned in the literature review, or explain all the related studies first, and then discuss our sentence cover. I think normally the critical commentary should come after your literature. You have to summarize, synthesize what you know have learned and what is your viewpoint. So the first place we explain each variable, right? We introduce the variable, then we explain it. The second stage is hypothesis development, right? So where you develop your relation to relation hypothesis, right? So the critical commentary, depending upon your university format or your supervisory approach, but it must be embedded in chapter 2. And then, you know, how you present it, that's, I think, subjective, quite subjective from people to people, how they do that. But your contribution should be visible, what you have been contributed, you know. Well, the weightage, I'm not sure what you mean in terms of percentage. All chapters are equally important. There is no percentage sort of mechanism, but you can see the volume. Yeah, a number of pages, normally the literature chapter is more because we're explaining each variable, then we are building hypotheses, the framework. So when you see in terms of volume, that is probably the questions. So like introduction chapter, normally, let's say maybe 20 pages or 25 pages, then chapter 2 maybe double to that. So kind of like in volume is the size is heavy, but importance all carry the same. So, but some student will put a lot of material. That's also not a good sign, because normally people will not read. If it is too much, they will just scan through and they will miss the important points. So I think better to be concise. Okay, you talk about this. It must be concise, because sometimes always the volume doesn't help, rather than it raise more questions. So I think that should be the way. Definitely, though, in volume, I mean, in terms of volume, I agree. But when you say the weightage, because you mentioned the same weightage, 25% methodology, 25, no, it cannot be just weightage, but in number of pages, yes, the literature review exceed. But in some cases, if you are, let's say, for example, using mixed method, then your analysis exceed, because your analysis is two now, is quantitative and qualitative. So all are equally important. In terms of pages can be varies depending upon what you choose, how you do. The AI apps connected with the literature review. I think we will take questions later. It's a break time now. Okay, so but I'll quickly scan through these one or two questions. Okay, presentation slides you will get. Can you differentiate between Google, Scopus, Scholar, Web of Science? Okay, I will do that. Yeah, at this stage, the data collection mean papers, not the data collection which collect through questionnaires. The difference between research gap and research problem is that the problem is basically what you want to investigate. What's the key issues, The gap is what the other researcher address and what you are addressing. What's that? That's the gap, meaning that what has been done in that area and what is not done. So that's the gap where you would like to address. Yeah, unpublished work normally we don't encourage, so better to be published, at least Scopus minimum, and definitely maximum is the Web of Science. You all will get presentation slides, okay? Okay, I think slides are almost finished, not moving because we finished the slides. I think we should take a quick break, okay? And then I think we'll get back to the same chat box and things, so then we can move forward. Okay, so get back, take a quick break. You have your early, it's almost maybe lunch or brunch, whatever. And we get back at 2. Okay. Just a quick suggestion, those who still want to be in chat, your friends or colleagues, I think you can also get into Facebook also. I think it better just to get a maximum coverage. Okay, so have a good break and then we get back at 2. Okay, thank you. Okay, some of the questions we will answer later. Okay, thank you.